The exploration of space has always been a risky endeavor, and over the years, there have been several devastating disasters that have shocked the world. Despite the significant advancements in technology, human errors, technical malfunctions, and natural disasters can lead to catastrophic events in space exploration. 4 of the worst disasters in spaceflight history are the Challenger explosion, the Columbia disaster, Soyuz 1 tragedy and the Soyuz 11 tragedy. These incidents resulted in the loss of lives and significant setbacks for space exploration, highlighting the dangers that come with pushing the boundaries of our understanding of the universe. Space Shuttle Challenger explosion. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into its flight, killing all 7 crew members aboard. The spacecraft disintegrated 46,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, off the coast of Cape Canaveral, Florida, at 11:39 a.m. EST. It was the first fatal accident involving an American spacecraft in flight. The mission, designated STS-51 Leader, was the 10th flight for the orbiter and the 25th flight of the Space Shuttle fleet. The crew was scheduled to deploy a communications satellite and study Halley's Comet while they were in orbit, in addition to taking school teacher Krista McAuliffe into space. The latter resulted in a higher than usual media interest and coverage of the mission. The launch and subsequent disaster were seen live in many schools across the United States. The cause of the disaster was the failure of the primary and secondary redundant O-ring seals in a joint in the shuttle's right solid rocket booster, SRB. The record low temperatures of the launch had stiffened the rubber O-rings, reducing their ability to seal the joints. Shortly after liftoff, the seals were breached, and hot pressurized gas from within the SRB leaked through the joint and burned through the aft attachment strut connecting it to the external propellant tank, ET, and later the tank itself. The collapse of the ET's internal structures and the rotation of the SRB that followed through the shuttle stack, traveling at a speed of Mach 1.92, into a direction which allowed aerodynamic forces to tear the orbiter apart. Both SRBs detached from the now destroyed ET and continued to fly uncontrolled until the range safety officer destroyed them. The Columbia disaster. On February 1, 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated as it re-entered the atmosphere over Texas and Louisiana, killing all 7 astronauts on board. It was the second Space Shuttle mission to end in disaster, after the loss of Challenger and crew in 1986. The mission, designated STS-107, was the 28th flight for the orbiter, the 113th flight of the Space Shuttle fleet and the 88th after the Challenger disaster. It was dedicated to research in various fields, mainly on board a module inside the shuttle. During launch, a piece of the insulating foam broke off from the Space Shuttle external tank and struck the thermal protection system tiles on the orbiter's left wing. Similar foam shedding had occurred during previous Space Shuttle launches, causing damage that ranged from minor to near catastrophic, but some engineers suspected that the damage to Columbia was more serious. Before re-entry, NASA managers had limited the investigation, reasoning that the crew could not have fixed the problem if it had been confirmed. When Columbia re-entered the atmosphere of Earth, the damage allowed hot atmospheric gases to penetrate the heat shield and destroy the internal wing structure, which caused the orbiter to become unstable and break apart. After the disaster, Space Shuttle flight operations were suspended for more than 2 years, as they had been after the Challenger disaster. Construction of the International Space Station, ISS, was paused until flights resumed in July 2005 with STS-114. Soyuz 1 tragedy. Soyuz 1 was a crewed spaceflight of the Soviet space program. Launched into orbit on April 23, 1967 carrying cosmonaut Colonel Vladimir Komarov, Soyuz 1 was the first crewed flight of the Soyuz spacecraft. The flight was plagued with technical issues, and Komarov was killed when the descent module crashed into the ground due to a parachute failure. This was the first in-flight fatality in the history of spaceflight. The original mission plan was complex, involving a rendezvous with Soyuz 2 and an exchange of crew members before returning to Earth. However, the launch of Soyuz 2 was called off due to thunderstorms. Soyuz 11 tragedy. Soyuz 11 was a manned space mission. It was the only mission to live on Salyut 1, the first space station. It was a backup mission of Soyuz 10, which was failed to dock. The mission killed 3 men in space when it lost air pressure during re-entry of the atmosphere. They were Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev. On June 30, 1971, after returning to the Earth of the capsule, the recovery team knocked on the side. There was no response. Opening the hatch, they found all 3 men in their couches, no motion. There had dark blue patches on their faces and trails of blood from their noses and ears. They brought them out from the capsule. Dobrovolsky was still warm. According to their reports, the reason of death was suffocation. The cosmonauts were buried in the Kremlin Wall necropolis at Red Square, Moscow, near the remains of Yuri Gagarin. U.S. astronaut Tom Stafford was one of the pallbearers. They were also each awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union Medal. In conclusion, the history of space exploration is not without its share of disasters. The accidents that have claimed the lives of brave astronauts and significantly impacted space exploration programs. While these tragedies have highlighted the risks involved in space exploration, they have also inspired a renewed commitment to safety and innovation, enabling us to continue pushing the boundaries of space exploration and uncovering new discoveries about our universe.